This video is an in-depth explanation and critical reflection of one teaching episode. This reflection will include links to educational theories, teaching strategies, and the Australian Professional Standards for Teachers. The students are a Year 9 commerce with diversity in student ability. Some students required additional support in the classroom as well as some gifted students. This lesson took place during Period 3, Week 9 of Term 2 and took place inside the classroom. The lesson is continuing the topic of political action. In previous lessons, students had been introduced to the role of political action and the importance of being an informed citizen. The purpose of this lesson was to investigate a controversial issue and has been in the forefront of media and political debates recently. This investigation was to identify the impact of decisions made by various organisations on different groups in the community. By the end of the lesson, students should understand the meaning of stakeholders, explain the reasons for and against the issue, and to make their own judgment on the issue through the appropriate use of ICT. The focus question for the lesson was, how does the Adani mine impact different stakeholders? A worksheet was created to guide students through the lesson, which built on students' prior knowledge. The first activity required students to brainstorm their ideas on their understanding of the terms stakeholder and perspective. This then led to a mind map where students brainstormed what they knew about mining. This activity is an example of Bruner's constructivist theory, as it establishes students' existing knowledge during the learning process. The class was then shown a YouTube video from Behind the News. The students watched the video and answered questions on their worksheet. My university supervisor stated this was useful for student engagement and the pace of the lesson. This stimulus proved to be useful for visual learners as it demonstrated ATSL's Teaching Standard 2.6. Implementing ICT expands curriculum learning opportunities for students. Students then split into pairs and were assigned to investigate either reasons supporting or reasons opposing the Adani mine. The worksheet provided a scaffold for their research, listing 3 stakeholders for each. Scaffolding students' research, as discussed by Bruner, pursues to support students' learning, while not compromising the essence of the task or students' investigation. The scaffolding provided students a framework for their research and created a sense of self-efficacy, as suggested by Bandura's concept of self-efficacy, as they were able to perceive their task as achievable. Vygotsky's social constructivism theory highlights the importance of social interactions throughout the learning process. The tables were set out in clusters to support collaborative learning, as suggested by Woolfolk and Margetts, as they're ideal for independent and collaborative learning. The seating arrangements positively contributed to the learning and teaching standard environment in the classroom. This activity links to ATSL Standard 4 of creating a supportive learning environment, as allocating groups encourages student participation. The class then regrouped to discuss each table's findings and were listed on the board. Changing the method of information being presented supported the diverse learning styles of the class. As Gardner's multiple intelligences theory suggests, learners have several ways of processing information, including interpersonal, intrapersonal, verbal, visual, and oral. These methods were implemented throughout each activity in this lesson. The remainder of the lesson was allocated to consolidating students' learning and assessing the learning goals. This was by students completing questions that required them to make their own judgment by applying their pre- and newfound knowledge. The worksheet I created was a tool to differentiate the lesson. It was created considering Bloom's hierarchy of learning, starting with pre-existing knowledge, growing in complexity, and finally evaluation. This worksheet demonstrates ATSL Standard 1.5, differentiating teaching to meet students' needs across a full range of abilities. Upon consideration of my practicum, supervisor's feedback, and Churchill's chapter on reflective practice, my perspective of this lesson has been challenged. My practicum supervisor suggested in future lessons, when initiating group work, to ensure to strategically allocate these groups rather than by convenience. In the future, I will ensure to pair a student who is motivated and responsible with a student who is not as engaged. According to Bandura, the student who is motivated will influence the other to actively participate. This will further strengthen the activities linked to ATSL Standard 4 and supporting student participation and engagement in the classroom. The feedback from my university supervisor was a catalyst to reconsider my learning goals. It was suggested that my learning goals were to be clearer at the beginning of the lesson so students could envision the purpose and goal of the lesson, and to provide myself as a teacher a guide throughout the lesson. Incorporating more explicit learning goals will improve my teaching practice as well as strengthen the links between my lessons to educational theories and ATSL's teaching standards.